California. Just hearing that name, your mind travels to scenes of sunny beaches, luxurious mansions, cutting-edge technology, and that air of Hollywood glamour, right? But what if I told you that right in the heart of this millionaire state, there is a city where reality is more like a nightmare? A side where gangs dominate entire neighborhoods, drug trafficking runs rampant, prostitution spreads through the streets, and the homeless crisis has reached frightening levels. Walking around certain areas has become a real game of survival, where abandoned and burnt-out cars share space with makeshift shacks under viaducts. Reports from residents speak of muggings at all hours of the day, shootings that start without warning, and streets that look more like war zones. The statistics confirm what the eye can already see. Oakland is no longer the same. Think that's an exaggeration? Then get ready, because today Bello Mundo introduces you to another side that doesn't appear in tourism advertisements. Welcome to the hidden side of Oakland. Number 1. The city. Oakland is in California, right next to San Francisco, separated only by a bridge. Sounds like a good place to live, right? After all, we're in California, the richest state in the United States, and we're talking about a city famous for its vibrant culture, sports scene, and a diversity that is reflected in the gastronomy, street art, and events that take place there. The city is home to iconic landmarks such as the historic Paramount Theater with its Art Deco architecture, and the Oakland Zoo, which impresses with its size and variety of species. Not to mention the trendy areas such as Uptown and Jack London Square, where there is no shortage of bars, galleries, craft breweries, and that relaxed energy that attracts tourists and locals alike. Now, here's an important detail. This is the part that everyone knows and that advertisements love to sell. But you only have to go off the beaten tourist track to realize that Oakland has another face, and it's not a pretty one. The city is facing a seemingly never-ending economic crisis. The public coffers are in the red, and corruption has become a regular feature in the local news. Add to this the escalation of violence, fueled by drug trafficking and gangs that dominate various areas, and we have a problem that is spiraling out of control. Anyone walking through certain neighborhoods might even feel like they're in a post-apocalyptic film set. Streets overrun by homeless encampments, graffiti covering entire facades, abandoned, burned-out cars, and a climate of constant insecurity. And to think that Oakland was once a benchmark in California. It once had its glory days, when it was a powerful industrial hub and a city with a strong political identity. But today, the reality is different. Here begins our tour of the invisible side of Oakland, the one that almost nobody shows you. Number 2. Oakland's roots and rise. Before talking about the current problems, it's important to understand how Oakland got to this point. The city had a prosperous past and was once considered one of California's industrial engines. In the 19th century, it grew rapidly as a strategic point for railroads crossing the United States. But it was during the Second World War that the economy really exploded, with the installation of shipyards and factories that employed thousands of workers. And these workers came from everywhere. Many were immigrants or African Americans who left the southern United States in search of better living conditions. At the time, Oakland was a veritable hub of opportunity and came to be called Industrial City. But this scenario didn't last forever. From the 60s and 70s onwards, the city began to decline. The phenomenon of deindustrialization, which hit many American metropolises, caused factories to close their doors and jobs to evaporate. Inequality, previously more contained, became wide open. It was during this period that Oakland became a center stage for social movements. The Black Panther Party was born there, in the midst of racial tensions and civil rights protests. While the city pulsed with a unique political energy, poverty grew and crime began to take over the streets. In the 80s and 90s, the situation was further aggravated by the crack epidemic, which ravaged many urban communities in the United States. Gangs grew stronger, crime skyrocketed, and many neighborhoods were marked by high levels of violence. There have been moments of improvement over the years, but Oakland has never managed to regain the glory of its industrial heyday. Today, the city is in stark contrast. On the one hand, revitalized neighborhoods, trendy cafes, and cultural events. On the other, areas where crime, drug trafficking, and poverty are daily realities. Anyone who comes to Oakland today sees a city full of history and culture, but also full of scars. And they're getting harder and harder to hide. Number 3. Inequality. California may boast the title of richest state in the United States, with a GDP of almost $4 trillion. But that doesn't mean that wealth is evenly distributed. And Oakland is living proof that it doesn't exactly enjoy a slice of the pie. While some neighborhoods have mansions, tree-lined streets, and a very high cost of living, other areas of the city look more like poor regions of Latin America or Central America than the California of Hollywood movies. There, you'll find bumpy streets, dilapidated houses, and a public education and health system that barely meets the basic needs of the population. And the problem doesn't stop there. The lack of job opportunities and the explosion in real estate prices in the San Francisco Bay Area put Oakland residents in an almost impossible situation. They either pay absurd rents or end up with nowhere to live. Many work full-time and still can't afford to stay in the city. And for those already living on a tightrope, a small, unforeseen event can mean losing their roof over their head and falling into the spiral of urban poverty. Number 4. Cost of living. You know that old wives' tale about luxury for the few, nightmare for the many? Well, Oakland is living proof of that. Living in California is already expensive by nature, but in Oakland the situation is even worse than the state average. To begin with, the average price of a house exceeds $700,000, and that doesn't mean luxury. We're talking about ordinary houses, with nothing extraordinary. Buying or renting has become unfeasible for a large part of the working class. And what about rents? A simple apartment in the center can cost around $2,500 a month, almost double the national average. And of course, electricity, water, and other basic expenses go hand in hand with this real estate inflation. It's no coincidence that the number of homeless people in Oakland has grown by around 130% in the last decade, making the city one of the hardest hit by the housing crisis in the United States. To live a minimally peaceful life in the city, you would need to earn around $40 an hour, more than double the minimum wage in California. But the most infuriating thing is that this absurd cost of living doesn't translate into quality public services. The streets in the poorest neighborhoods are still full of potholes, garbage collection fails frequently, and the homeless shelters can't keep up with the demand. For those who can no longer cope, the solution is to leave California for good, contributing to a population exodus that has been much discussed in recent years. And those who can't leave end up being swallowed up by this system and end up on the streets, as we'll show below. Number 5. The homeless crisis. Driving through Oakland can seem like a dystopian movie scenario. In the western part of the city, entire neighborhoods have been taken over by homeless encampments, and one of the most extreme examples of this is the Wood Street neighborhood. What was once a busy industrial area has now become one of the largest urban encampments in California. Under the viaducts, hundreds of people live in makeshift tents, abandoned trailers, and precarious structures made of wood and canvas. Whole blocks seem to have been taken over by real urban slums. Officially, it is estimated that more than 5,000 people live in these conditions. But the real figure could be much higher, as not everyone is included in the official statistics. The biggest culprit in this crisis, as we've just said, is the out-of-control cost of living. As you've seen, rent prices have skyrocketed in recent years, and even those with steady jobs can end up homeless. The shocking thing is that it's not just people with addictions or mental health problems. There are entire families, the elderly, and even workers who simply can't afford a roof over their heads. As well as being a social problem, this crisis directly affects public health and safety in the city. The accumulation of garbage and debris near these camps encourages rat plagues, disease outbreaks, and even accidental fires. Residents complain of theft and violence, while those who live on the streets report constant aggression and a total lack of assistance. But anyone who thinks that Oakland's biggest problem is visible poverty is mistaken. Violence has taken over the city, and crime is now part of everyday life. Number 6. Crime. Another striking fact is crime. In 2023, statistics showed an increase of almost 40% in cases of robbery compared to the previous year. And it's not just cold statistics. Residents report that they are increasingly seeing armed robberies taking place in broad daylight with a sense of impunity. There's even an informal nickname for certain types of break-in and theft, ram and rob, when thieves speed a car into an establishment and then ransack the whole place. Part of this chaos is linked to a lack of police. Oakland has gone through budget cuts, early retirements of officers, and internal controversies that have resulted in the absence of a permanent police chief. All of this contributes to a slow response time when someone calls the police. Some people say they wait almost an hour for the police to arrive, which makes many shopkeepers give up registering complaints or even keep their businesses open late. To make matters worse, this climate of insecurity drives away customers, tourists, and potential investors. Some large retail chains have closed their doors there, fearing losses or even the physical integrity of their employees. The result is a city where entire neighborhoods seem abandoned, almost like ghost towns within Oakland. But if you think Oakland's crime is all about thefts and muggings, wait until you discover the brutal reality there, where girls and women are exploited without anyone being able to stop it. Number 7. Prostitution. When it comes to sexual exploitation and crimes linked to this industry, most people think of big cities like New York or Los Angeles. But the truth is that Oakland is experiencing a reality that is just as shocking, perhaps even worse. Entire neighborhoods have become showcases of degradation. In areas like International Boulevard and San Antonio, the situation is no longer hidden. It's a scene from a crime movie, but without cuts, makeup, or a happy ending. Half-naked women vie for space on street corners, in broad daylight in front of schools, markets, and bus stops. For those who live in the area, it's not uncommon to leave the house and come across pimps prowling the sidewalks, drivers slowing down to negotiate, and customers circulating at all hours. And don't think that this problem is restricted to a few streets. The impact is widespread. Residents report aggressive approaches, kidnapping attempts, and even children witnessing scenes that no child should see. The feeling? The feeling of living in a city where the laws no longer apply to everyone. For many women, selling their bodies has become the only way to make ends meet, and in some cases, the only alternative left before ending up on the streets. But not all of them are there on their own. Forced recruitment and coercion by criminals are part of this cruel machinery. The authorities have tried to react. In certain areas, barriers have been installed to prevent cars from accessing the area in an attempt to keep the problem at bay. What happened? The blocked streets simply passed the baton to others, meaning that the activity was merely displaced, not solved. But the worst is yet to come. If the exposure of this market already reveals the decay of the city, the drug epidemic only deepens the hole. The question now is, how low will Oakland sink? Number 8. Drug crisis. To end this unconventional tour, let's talk about the drug crisis. If crime was already a serious problem, the drug crisis adds an even darker chapter to Oakland's history. The scenario couldn't be worse. Streets dominated by illicit substances, addicts wandering aimlessly, and an underground market that is growing unstoppably. In much of the United States, when people talk about the drug epidemic, the first thing that comes to mind is fentanyl, heroin, or crack. But in Oakland, in addition to these, methamphetamine has become one of the main culprits of social devastation. And the situation is far from new. For years, California has been facing an increase in the consumption of opioids, drugs that often start out as a simple painkiller prescribed by a doctor and end up leading their users to an uncontrollable addiction. For many, the transition to heavier substances, such as heroin or fentanyl, happens quickly. Before they know it, they've been completely taken over by addiction. The figures show the scale of the disaster. In 2017, deaths related to methamphetamine use in Alameda County, where Oakland is located, were around 10. In 2022, the number exceeded 160. What happened? Drugs have become more accessible, cheaper, and above all, more lethal. Now imagine this problem added to the homelessness crisis. For many people living on the streets, methamphetamine has become a survival tool. It keeps them awake, prevents them from being robbed or assaulted while they sleep outside. But what begins as a defense mechanism soon turns into a vicious cycle that destroys any chance of recovery. And it's not just the effect of the drug that's frightening, it's its impact on crime. Desperate addicts become easy prey for drug dealers and gangs, who recruit them to commit petty crimes in exchange for doses. The result? More thefts, more robberies, more urban violence. For many, it's unbelievable to think that this is happening in California, the land of Silicon Valley, innovation, and technology. But this is the reality of a city that has seen its decline accelerate, and that, every year, seems to sink even further into this scenario of social collapse. And that's it for today. What about you? Were you surprised by what you discovered about this hidden face of Oakland? Leave a comment below because I really want to know what you think. If you enjoy exploring places from the angle that nobody shows you, keep following Bello Mundo. There's still a lot that the conventional tour doesn't tell you about. Thanks for sticking around and see you next time.